right, so just a second here. We're going in. It's about to go live, yeah. So, all right. Welcome to Disc Golf History and Legends, sponsored by Blue Power Disc Golf. And here is your host, Scott Stokely.
That's the one.
Welcome to Disc Golf History and Legends, sponsored by Blue Power Disc Golf.
Hey everyone. So
Scott Stokely.
we're going to learn a routine. So first off, welcome everybody. This is episode 2. As we talked about in the first episode, I'm going to do it's a weekly podcast series on the history and legends. Oh, I need to turn the volume down over here. So that's my mistake. I'm a rookie, but now that's not an issue. So we're going to be doing a weekly podcast on the history of disc golf, and I'm going to be doing these in segments. And one of the things I'm going to do is exactly 50 history of disc golf and fill in state name here. And part of the reason for doing these segments is that I have an agenda. I openly have an ulterior motive for doing these podcasts. I'm running 10 Blue Power disc golf events this year. And by coincidence, the second event is going to be in Eagle, Colorado on June 23rd and 24th. There's also going to be later this year events in Whitefield, Colorado and Denver. Federal Heights, Colorado as well. Now, these are Blue Power disc golf events. These are different than the Blue Power events I've run in the past, as they are all PDGA sanctioned, C-tier disc golf tournaments. So if you want to come out and play just disc golf, it's 100% payback in cash for pros, 100% payback in prizes for AMs, CTPs, ace pools. It's a golf tournament. What makes it special at these tournaments is the Blue Power component, which is on Saturday afternoon at every single one of these events is going to be a free disc golf class for kids and adults with special needs. So if any one of you, and I think we all do, know someone with autism or Down syndrome, blind, paraplegic, CP, ADHD, kid or adult, doesn't matter, bring them out to the free disc golf class on Saturday afternoon. All the information's up at pdga.com and discgolfscene.com. But everyone who comes out is going to get a golf disc just for having the courage to give this great sport a try. And so that's my plug. So come out to Eagle to golf, and then bring our special needs peeps. Let's bring them in. So this is super exciting. And so the want to come up and do it in person and be a bit of a reunion. So I'm going to introduce them briefly and then talk to them about a little bit about themselves, and then we'll get into the history of the sport. So starting with Geoff Hungerford, he's would you say he's the oldest timer in terms of playing? You started before everyone else.
Well, I'm not sure that he started before John Bird, but certainly in Colorado.
Okay, in Colorado. And then John Bird, who everyone knows started before Geoff Hungerford, but not in Colorado. and then Bill Wright. So just real quick, so can you tell me just briefly what brought you into the sport, Geoff, and then we'll go around?
Yeah, I came home from college to Rochester, New York, where I grew up in 1974. And Jim Palmieri had been my 7th grade teacher and a high school coach. And we got in contact, and he told me he's going to hold a Frisbee golf tournament.
Okay.
And I got very excited about it. So that summer of 1974 is when I really got going, seriously.
Okay. And John, you were, I guess, were playing elsewhere.
I was playing in California, Northern California originally. Went down to Fresno to go to school at Fresno State.
Okay.
Met George Sappenfield, who you can find out who he is in Jim Palmieri's book.
Okay.
Good plug for you, Jim. And then from that, we started teaching a class together, Frisbee class, and that kind of got me started in 1972. 77, I moved out to Colorado and have been here ever since.
And starting in 72, the first permanent disc golf course went into the ground with pole holes. Not the first permanent course. The first course with pole holes went into the ground in 1975. 76.
76.
76.
May of 76.
May of 76 in Pasadena. So 4 years before
Yeah.
that went into the ground,
Yeah.
you were playing. And then Bill,
Well, I and I just said, I'm going to go to college and play Frisbee. And so I came up here to Colorado State University in Fort Collins and in the fall of 1976, and we started playing immediately and have never stopped.
okay. So some of these questions, they're not going to be leading questions. I don't know the answer to these. So when was disc golf started? Barring the people that were making up the game on campuses, which happened independently all over the country or all over the world. But when did the first established course go into the ground? Or at the very least, when
In
did
Colorado?
or what, not even in the ground. When did someone actually mark out, this is where you throw from, this is the pole you hit? Any idea where the first one?
The earliest one that I can remember would have been the fall of 1974. And now there may have been activity before that I don't know about, but once I'd played that American Flying Disc Open and I was addicted to Frisbee, I got back to Boulder. I was going to college, and the first thing I did is make up 9 holes on CU campus, and then a year later they would make that permanent. But that's the first one I know about.
Tell them about those golf holes. What did the golf holes look like in Rochester and the AFDAO in 74?
Well, we played at St. John Fisher College.
Right.
And we played around the campus with beautiful big trees and mowed grass. And there were some open spots and some crazy holes that went over tennis courts and things like that. But Jim did a pretty good job with it. And keep in mind that in 1974, we didn't have a 40 mold. There were no golf discs. I played with a pro model and a super pro, and we also had a disc that most people haven't heard of called the CPI, and those were our golf discs in 74.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point that I think you were asking about, is that in the early days, there was no precedent. You guys were inventing this as you went along. So the idea of, say, a playground being an obstacle or even possibly out of bounds, that happened back in the
A fountain, a trash can.
Trash can, light poles.
But didn't the ground baskets exist?
So in 1974, when Jim, he thought he invented all this. Now, he did invent double disc golf, but you read his book and you'll find out there are lots of people that were playing golf of one variety or another, probably 400 years before Christ. So, but anyway, Jim thought in 74 that this is his invention. And what he did in that particular year was make these little square boxes out of wood. It was about that tall, and he put a flag in the middle of it. And the next year, he used chicken wire. And the idea was these little box outlines were on the ground, and you just sort of have to go in there and then stay in on the grass. And that was what the 74 American Flying Disc Open was like.
Right.
Now, where did Colorado fit into the equation as far as the sport of Frisbee taking?
Because we had both Pueblo and
Ken
Carl in 77, right?
78.
78,
Yeah.
both of them in 78.
78, 79.
So, but both probably designed by Ed, coming
Yes.
out and soliciting and putting them in the ground. 9-hole courses, both of them.
Yeah. And very short. Very Ed Hedrick.
Yeah. Well, and everyone knows the first course is Oak Grove Park in Pasadena, but there's debate on what the second course was, and there's about a dozen courses that have claimed to be.
Yeah.
Is Ken Carroll would be considered one of the ones that is?
They were, those two were somewhere around probably the first 30 to 50.
Okay.
There's not very good records.
Right.
Now, in
From back then.
1978, you and I were competing to get to the next level of the $50,000 tournament. Do you remember that? We competed at
Well,
Ken Carroll.
that was in 79.
I think I had already stopped playing in 79.
Ooh, fight.
Are you sure about that?
Our first fight.
Yeah.
I guess I was playing in 79. But I remember you beat me and it was close.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fun.
Yeah, and this
With
was
40 mold, we actually had the course is so short that we had to be careful of not throwing way out of the course.
with a 40 mold.
With a 40 mold. Yeah.
By the way, if people don't know what a 40 mold is, this is a 40 mold.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how to show this to the camera. Maybe you can you can manage it.
Yeah, well, I mean, and if you bought this in the store back, it was called a
Yeah.
119 because it weighed 119 grams. The 141 weighed 141 grams, which was a 50 mold, but this was the 40 mold.
And
This was the go ahead.
the one that I had that I won with weighed all of 154 grams. That was heavy.
And how many golf discs did you carry in this bag of drivers and putters?
I probably only had 5, maybe
5?
6,
Okay,
and no bag, probably.
and a very small bag.
right.
In fact, I still have. I wish I would have brought it, but the first disc bag that I had was actually from a pair of overalls that I used to wear, cut off the legs and sewed up the bottom, and so I had one of the first original backpack
Wow.
disc bags.
Yeah, and interesting, the thing about the discs back then is that if you were throwing a right-handed backhand, the variety of discs were the ones that turned right a little bit, all the way to turning right a lot. A left-turning disc didn't exist for almost a decade after that.
Yeah.
For a right-handed person.
For a right-handed throwing backhand.
Yeah.
Nothing went left.
So you said your 40 mold weighed 154 grams. It wasn't a. So that didn't happen in 78. I'm pretty sure that wasn't until 79 or later that the midnight that they put glow plastic in there, right?
79?
So that
it probably was it was probably late 78.
okay. Yeah, because I remember distinctly being at a distance tournament and all of a sudden a few people had night glow
And they could
plastic
outthrow everybody.
and they
I know.
outthrew everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, oh well, that seems fair.
Now, the standard 40 molds like this one was a lot closer to 119 grams.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay.
It's like Tom Sims coming to the first snowboard contest at Berthoud Pass. He was the only one that had metal edges. Of course he was going to win.
Right. Well, and getting good discs was dependent really a lot on where you live.
Yeah.
And who you knew.
knew.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's right.
Okay.
That's
So the first this one, of course, one. So you said the first golf tournament was that the qualifier, or
No.
Well, no.
Would have been the 1975 Boulder Flying Disc Festival.
okay,
That was an overall event, and it was run by Bob Mole. And
Okay.
to my knowledge, I've not heard of a disc golf competition or an overall competition prior to September of 1975. So I kind of credit Bob Mole with, he's the first TD, the first enthusiast. But because I started playing a year before that, I thought I was the only one in Boulder, but I was not. And Rick Kavar was there, and he was active in playing, and Bob Mole. So the three of us met there at that Boulder Flying Disc Festival in September of 1975.
so you could count all the players in Boulder on less than a hand.
Probably.
That's
But
fantastic.
it grew pretty fast after that, though.
Okay, and so that was in Boulder. So that, and back then, if these were overall tournaments, what that meant is there were multiple events. You played frisbee.
I'm not sure that there was a disc golf specific event until much later, right?
I think that's right.
They
were
maybe your qualifier at Ken Carl might have been, a qualifier for
That was
the
probably a
50,000
unique- yeah, that's right.
was probably one of the few disc golf only events, because frisbee was frisbee. It wasn't disc golf or freestyle or distance or anything. It was, you went and you did, just about everything, or a combined number of events at any tournament.
That's right.
Well, there would have been frisbee, a golf event, which was the Tournament of the Harvest Moon in Arvada, at Memorial Park, and that would have been Tom Carey did the first one, and then I took over from there, and that was 77, 78.
That's pretty early for a standalone
Right.
golf
Yeah.
tournament.
And it was just kind of a fun thing that was that he did with the JCs, and it coincided with the Arvada Harvest Festival.
Okay, and who were the top dogs back then? You're allowed to brag if it was you guys.
Well, I would say that Jeff and I were sort of, he definitely could throw a lot farther than I could, but I could out-putt him. So.
Well, and there was another individual named Nick Dominic.
Dominic,
And he probably could beat us both. He was from Boulder, and he's a college student. He
Turned
also,
into a fantastic ultimate player, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. So that tournament was in Boulder. So where did it expand from there? And at what point did the basket courses go in? That's because the tournament was before the basket courses. Like, what's the timeline on that?
Well, it sounds like 77 or 78 before any baskets came into Colorado.
Yeah.
So that was, and I don't know that there was any other, kind of set even object course, although the course in Fort Collins was being played light pole to light pole. And it wasn't anything official except for they'd go around and put tape around the light poles and say, okay, that's hole number 5. But
we throw a fire hydrant sometimes, because it was there and you could see it.
And the Boulder course had some really interesting obstacles.
You mean the campus course?
The campus course.
Yeah.
It had the, the fountain.
The fountain, the huge lion tub,
Yeah.
You could reach from 300 feet.
I remember that being my first real experience playing disc golf is at an NAS there that I had no idea.
And Memorial Park at Arvada, we started obstacle course there in probably 78 as well.
So when the baskets went in the ground, was this seen as a really revolutionary thing at the time, or was this just like, oh, that's a better obstacle?
We never even heard about it, really. Hardly. So I mean, you think about how easy communication is today, and something happens and about it 5 minutes later. It wasn't like that back then. There was no newsletter. The IFA newsletter or Frisbee World came out every 4 months, and that was news that happened 6-8 months ago. So you never things didn't travel that much except for in very tight circles, and it took a while for that to get around.
And then a flop to bring that up to the future is that we just redid Harlow Platte in Boulder, a 9-hole course. They now have 9 tees and 18 baskets on this little course. And as we had it down for 2 weeks, and yesterday we baskets in, and by the time we had 3 baskets out, there were already people playing on their cell phone, telling everybody else to come on down. The baskets are in.
I got you.
And before we could get all of them out of there were 20 people out of playing.
Gotcha. I was just saying, okay, so if I happen to skip over something, please reel that back, because I'm just whimming this. So you were saying?
I was going to answer your question. So you're asking about, what do we think of baskets back then?
Yeah.
First time I ever saw a metal basket was the 1976 World Frisbee Championship. You were there. And they were fantastically expensive. I mean, it was almost unrealistic to think that you would buy this thing for, I don't know what he'd sell them to you for $180
for like about $300,
because they had to be hand welded on a special jig, and so the idea of
These are
getting
Mach 1s.
and it was quite a contraption. I mean, for people in that day, it was hard to take it in, this metal thing with chains. It was kind of odd looking, and you're like, wow, it's really heavy, and it's just a lot easier through a telephone pole,
Yeah. Well, what made the basket so revolutionary was that before the basket, there was no definitive answer whether or not the hole was complete.
Yeah,
that was always a question, and all it did is it made it
campus course.
Go
in the fountain.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's true. There are exceptions,
Yeah.
but that was the biggest. Ed Hedrick, regardless, that was his contribution. He made the sport
defined,
quantifiable. Yeah. Okay, so that's when the courses the wedding down there. Was Fort Collins soon to follow, or?
Well, not for any kind of permanent course. We had the object course, the light poles and stuff like that. It wasn't until 1983 that Discraft had come up with they call it the pole par, and I'm not sure that there was even 2 of them in the country ever, but Fort Collins had the first one, and just an aluminum pole, which was kind of cool. And we'd fill it with sand up to the lower red line, which you had to hit above the lower red line. And so below that, it would go dunk, and then above it, it'd go ding. and so kind of like tone poles of today and stuff like that.
Sure.
It worked pretty good, and we were thrilled. It was a permanent disc golf course on campus at Colorado State University. I'm sure it was the first permanent course in northern Colorado anywhere, and it really, just like you put it in the course today, it revolutionized the amount of people that were playing and wanted to go out and play and enjoy campus and stuff like that. It was incredible.
When we saw Bill in the car behind us, we'd fill it with a little more sand. So it's a little harder to hit.
Well, this is an interesting thing back then too, because the goal I'm asking this was to try to get exposure for this new game, this new sport, and so courses would go into places that were heavily trafficked, which traffic nobody would know it existed. So
it's exactly why we got courses. They would like one of our main course here in town, Eudora Park, they were going, what can we do to make this park more popular? And I was like raising my hand, writing proposals, so we got a course at Eudora Park largely because they wanted more traffic in the park. They wanted more things to happen there, and we certainly made that happen, and it caused problems over the years, but it's still there, and we made it work to the point where it wasn't as hazardous as it was at first. But yeah, that's we're a lot more inclined these days to have a course that's a dedicated disc golf course that you don't have other activities all around it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's when the city of Arvada was having problems with Johnny Roberts' course. I worked with them on that, and I kept asking them, well, do you have any land that's just not being used? And kept for about 6 months, and finally they broke down. They said, well, yeah, we have some over here. And we went out to this area, which is now Bird's Nest Disc Park. And when they were looking for a name for it, they said, I don't care what you call it, as long as it's a disc park.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's a totally separate thing, and that no other activities could start encroaching on it, as what happened to Eudora and every other park that
Now, what year was that? When did you first start talking about that particular course?
That first course, the whole process started in 1999. Okay.
Almost 20 years ago.
And yeah, but we didn't actually put baskets in 2004.
Okay.
So that's how long the process.
So as long as we're on this, I got to ask you this question. You have designed and installed and worked for so many courses. How many have you been responsible for? You don't even know.
Yeah, I don't.
Everywhere from Utah to California.
I don't keep track of numbers. I'm
Fort Morgan,
terrible.
right? There's two courses.
I'm too busy doing. I don't.
And Boulder, Valmont.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Well, how many have I been involved with? I don't know. Probably 20-ish.
20. Okay.
Or so. I don't know.
Well, that brings a question. So, and you're still doing this, right?
Yeah.
So, talk about, if you could, the difference between the way cities and parks and neighborhoods responded to a disc golf course going or wanting to put it in versus the way they view it today. Because if you're a new player, your local park is going to the manufacturers they want a course in the ground, but it wasn't always like that.
It was. Well, like with Memorial Park, is we just started playing in the park, and we marked off things, and the park guys kind of thought it was a novelty and that it was just a fad and they would go away, and there we go. And then we went to them and said, well, we really don't want to mark up your trees and do all this. Can we start putting posts in here? And well, yeah, but just let us know where you want to put them. So, and that's the way that it actually got established. That doesn't happen today anymore, and you don't want to do that way. Now you're going to
do a neighborhood outreach.
Yeah, you're doing. You have to go to park advisory boards, and basically you have to. If you really want a course, you might have to dedicate 3 to 4 years. It took almost 10 years to get Belmont Park disc golf course. Yeah.
And that's in Boulder.
And that's in Boulder.
And Memorial Park is in Arvada.
And yes,
For the listeners who don't know what those are.
And so it's always going to be a process now of public meetings and just a lot of education that you have to put forward that this is what it is, and then also selecting the right site. Because if you put it in the wrong place, which is what happens a lot, is there's a lot of conflicts, and that's why courses get pulled out.
Okay. Amazing. So you started, Bill. I'm going to give a little introduction to where I discovered Bill as part of the sport. I didn't meet you guys till much later. Yeah. When we were out in California growing up in not the old days, but my version of old days in the 80s, at some point there was a rumor that there were 2 stores, actual retail stores that carried golf discs. One was in Oklahoma at Fred's Liquor Store in Oklahoma City, and the other was the store called The Right Life in Fort Collins. But that actually was being talked about on disc golf courses in California, that is not just a store, a sporting goods store sold golf discs in the store. So you were a pioneer with that. So how did that, please.
Well, I certainly didn't approach it that way back then. We just wanted to do what we like to do, and so we put a bunch of things. I graduated from Colorado State University in December of 1980, and knew at some point I had to do something with my life, and so I went out and traveled and played Frisbee and traveled to actually freestyle Frisbee tournaments all over the country throughout 1981, about August, and then I came back to Fort Collins and said, well, maybe I'll open a store. What a novel idea. And I had a business management degree, and I thought that would be good. So we opened the store in October of 81, and I had basically 3 or 4 bins of different discs, Midnight Flyers and freestyle discs and ultimate discs and stuff like that. But in 1981 there wasn't a beveled edge disc on the market.
But you had Super Puppies.
But we had Super Puppies, and we had heavier heavier 40 mold type disc was what Super Puppies were, and Discraft, I believe, kind of had the Sky Streak pretty close to in there and stuff like that. So we had a store with discs, and we had snowboards and skateboards, and it seemed like a good fit, and we just kept it going. And 37 years later, we're doing the same thing, and we have what is it? I don't know, 100 different molds, and a massive part of our store is disc golf, and it grew into this thing that we had no idea what was going to happen. But as soon as John Jewell drove up in his RV, he was traveling to Fort Collins and pulled his box of orange eagles out of his RV and said, look at what Selinsky's doing out in California, and we're like, oh wow, this is going to change everything, and it changed everything.
Well, and back then you could buy golf discs usually out of the trunk of someone's car if there was a person selling at the course or at tournaments, but that person would never have the full variety of discs. There were 2 places in the world where you actually could choose from every disc on the market, which was Dan Mangoni Discovering the World out of California and The Right Life. Both of them had print catalogs for you kids. They're made of paper, and they I sound like an old person. I am, but this was, that was also revolutionary, because if you wanted an eagle, 138 grams, and you could actually, from these 2 locations only, you could buy them, unless you lived in California or Charlotte or Austin or something. But
there was a disc warehouse.
Yeah.
And
it started to develop, into bigger things, and people, had bigger operations. But we're early in the game, and certainly with growth comes, more people selling, more retailers, and really the retailers had a big role in promoting the sport. You could come down there and get a map, or you could find out where the courses were, and again, we no internet till 95 or whatever, so you had to find out things through other methods, and on your computer. And so the retailers and the events were the ones that really kind of spread the word about what was happening, where the next event was, where all the courses, there's a new course going in. And you could find out that information.
Now the CDSA would send out newsletters.
Yep.
This before the internet.
We still had IFA and Frisbee World up through 82, so there was some printed information going out. A lot of clubs had flyers. And that was really cool.
So before we get too far past the early 80s, one of the reasons for this podcast is I want people to know about some of the interesting people back in the day. I prepared these guys for none of this. So this is all off the cuff. But there had to have been some characters back in the old days, some stories of some interesting folks.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about Jamie a little bit earlier, and Jamie Chantilly's, and Scott was talking about this too. With the early days of baseball, that they would carry a whiskey flask in their back pocket and stuff like that while they were playing. Well, disc had its own lore about playing, and it started with even earlier than that in the 70s, where it was just hippies that played. They went out and they liked to throw the disc just to watch it fly, and that happened for quite a while. And you didn't really the true competitive spirit was there, but it was there was a lot about having fun at these tournaments. That's for sure.
To put it lightly.
To put it lightly, yeah. So it was and ultimate too. It was all about who won the party. The game could be hot on the field, but once you got to the party, that's where the real competition came down.
Gotcha. So what was the story you said about Jamie or you were talking about Jamie?
He's my freestyle partner.
Yeah, if there was traffic,
Let's go back one.
Okay.
Let's go back to a few weeks ago when you and Terry Miller were on SmashBoxx.
Okay.
And you were pointing out that disc sports seemed to attract some odd birds.
Yes.
And that was very true in the 70s. To get involved with a competitive Frisbee sports or freestyle, you had to be a little bit on the lunatic fringe. And so the group of people that we all met, and you were at 74 Worlds. I wasn't at Worlds until 75. But I think every single one of those people that I would meet nationwide just had a little bit, I don't want to use the word goofy, but they were way out there. They were forward thinkers, right? So when you're asking, were there any odd characters back then? They were all odd characters, okay, including me and John. And actually, John's pretty normal. You were pretty normal back then, with those funky flare plants and the long hair.
That was the normal long-haired.
Yeah. Sonoma State.
Sonoma.
Yeah. Lived in San Francisco, Petaluma, Cotati.
And I think that the characters just all rolled through. I mean, we were a place where people could be odd and feel very comfortable.
Yes,
and so that was the cool part about it. And talk a lot about when we started out and started promoting disc sports and wanted to make it a little bit more professional feeling and stuff like that. But we had a group of people that really didn't fit in with basketball, baseball, and football and soccer. We had people that wanted to do their own thing, and that was the coolest thing. Really, it brought out the neatest people. All of our mentors here in Colorado is Johnny Robertson, and he was a teacher, but he just loved this sports. And I remember very distinctly the first time that I met Johnny. I was at Stork Field in Santa Barbara at the NAS out there, and it was probably NAS 78 or 79, and I was like, oh man, there's Johnny Roberts. I gotta go say hi. And I know he's from Colorado also. And I walked up there, and he was practicing MTA, and I was like, what are you doing? Getting ready for competition? And he goes, no, I just wanted to watch it fly. And I'm like, I get it. And it was just from then on, he was my friend in the Frisbee worlds, because he had nothing to do with really hardcore competition. He just wanted to go out there and play and watch it, and then go chase the sun someplace.
Well, and what's amazing is that a lot of the athletes back then are very underrated, but it's exactly what you said. I mean, you have this same. You have a pool of people who are genetically gifted with plan and all those skills needed to become good at sports, but there was a fraction of them who didn't fit in to all the cliche sports, and they became surfers, skateboarders,
Snowboarders.
not snowboarders back then, but even skiing was a bit of a fringe back then too,
Yeah.
even a little bit. But they were just as athletically gifted. They just didn't look the part.
Right.
They didn't pass the eyeball test. They wouldn't have succeeded at the combine, but they could play. They could play, and they had game. And the game back then, everyone developed their game for the courses and the discs at
And
the
the
time.
discs.
So when you watch old videos, it might look like, wow, these guys don't really throw correctly, but they threw correctly for that time on those courses. So, like I said, so as we got into the 80s, go ahead.
So you know, I always felt like it was a little bit group 2 and being crazy enough to go to Sonoma State College, walk into the athletic department and ask if I could talk to the athletic director. And they said, okay, could we tell, how come? Well, I want to start a class. Okay. And at that time, the Sonoma State athletic department was pretty conservative, as most athletic departments were. And so he said, sure, come on in, sit down. He said, what could I do for you? And I said, well, I want to start a Frisbee class. Of course, he kind of looked at me and kind of giggled like, you want to do tiddlywinks next or what? So, he said, well, what do you want? What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to teach a sport of Frisbee sport and flying disc, and it's going to be winter, so we need a gym, and I'd like to start it this fall. Okay. So he said, well, can you get me a proposal together? I said, yeah, when would you like it? And he said, well, I don't know. I said, okay, I'll have it to you tomorrow. So I went home, put together a proposal, brought it back. And he said, oh, you're serious about this? And I said, yeah. And I said, okay, well, we'll get you, we'll let you do it. What night do you want to do it? I said, well, what night do we have a gym space open? Because we're going to do it at night. Okay. He said, well, we've got the gym open Monday night, but I don't think that it's going to be very successful because that's Monday night football. I said, okay, I'll take it. And I've got to limit it to only 30 people. What do you mean 30? I said, yeah, I can only handle 30 people. That's it. Any more than that, then I can't. Oh, okay. So the first night of the class, go in there and I've got 30 students signed up, and I've got a waiting list of 20.
Now, was this a class for credit at Sonoma?
And it was a accredited PE class.
Was that the first one you know of?
Has to be the first one.
No, the one that George and I did in '73 was accredited as well. It was actually upper division credits.
That was in Fresno?
Yeah.
So it wasn't the first one. It was the other one you did. That was
Yeah.
But storied history in Sonoma began with that, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, because
Gotcha.
that Sonoma was a hotbed for a lot of players to come out of at that time.
And then
the UFOs.
we got John Bird in Colorado when in 77. 77. Okay.
Yeah. I actually basically was going to go to school at DU and came out for that, and I just never left.
Well, then we laid claim to you, and
So, yeah.
you could never leave.
And
Now, Monica Lou landed in Boulder.
July of '77.
Same time
Yeah.
as you.
Yeah.
So-
And who was Monica?
Okay, Monica was she threw farther than any female, I think,
Yeah.
at that time, and went on for a few years, and she was.
And quite a few.
Name on the four signature G series discs, which was the initial of the G series signature discs from Whammo.
She was the Paige Pierce of the 70s.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so for those listening, you know some of these names might not sound familiar, but at the World Championships they'd they give you a world title if you won the distance. So Monica, districtly. But we also had John Kirkland in Boulder for a few years. I think that was a little bit later.
Yeah, it was definitely later.
When he started playing regular golf.
The other golf.
Okay, so we have to stop here for a second because everyone who knows John today, I love John to death. I love you, John. Great.
John Kirkland?
Yeah, everyone that knows John today loves John. What was your opinion of John back then? Was it?
No, we
take turns?
actually
Can we give away his nickname?
Kirkland? I don't know. You know, we being freestylers, we had a different connection with him because we were kind of dedicated freestylers, and John liked himself to be, you know, one of the best freestylers, and he was. You know, he started out, you know, his initial inductee into the Freestyle Hall of Fame, and him and Malafronte set the world on fire playing Globetrotter half times in, you know, 74, and so it was just, he just did so much to advance disc sports back then, but kind of everything went through him, you know. So where'd you get that? You know, John said he invented that move, or, you know, it was but, you know, really the most gracious guy in the world. You know, he'd invite you to his house, he'd show you around, and you know, his history is you know, second to none as far as, you know, his world of disc play, and
he dominated for so long.
He did. It was incredible, and it was just, he was just, it's talk about characters. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
You know,
he
just
was,
you know,
that's right.
because he liked to talk, and he liked to tell stories, and still does, and you know, it made it all a lot of fun.
Was he a bit arrogant back then?
Back then, now, you know, always. But
Yeah, but he backed it up.
Yeah, he did.
That's
You
what
know,
was great.
it was, and it made it, and he took it and he gave it out. You know, it was really actually quite entertaining to you know, to banter back and forth with him.
See, so I heard a story of John from an unnamed person who was throwing distance in the Rose Bowl, and at the time I think you would get 3 throws. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but you would get 3 throws, then the next person would step up and get 3 throws, and John was waiting for his turn behind a player, and when that player went to throw, I think you know the story, but all of a sudden the wind picked up, and it's luck of the draw, right? But the wind picked up. John pushed the guy out of the way with the phrase, "I'm John Kirkland," and then proceeded to take his spot, which he could get away with back then, right? Maybe.
I've heard the story, but I wasn't there.
Okay.
I had a similar story of that with John in Boulder at one of the tournaments, and we were getting ready to throw him, and he walked around. And
that was 76 national.
Was gonna move around, and basically the wind changed. He was gonna be there, and I just said, John, back at the end of the line, you're not doing this to me.
Well, so
I said, I'm gonna throw before you.
I was there. I was one of the top 5 that had made the finals, and the 76 nationals. In fact, I have a picture of that in here. We're gonna pull it out later. But
okay.
Here's what happened: is that in those days there were conventions for distance. So the top qualifier would throw last in the finals.
Okay.
And then we did that at Worlds, and we did that in Boulder. And then if you were the 5th qualifier, like I was going to throw first. And right about the time we were holding the finals, you know, in comes one of those storms in Boulder. It gets black and the wind picks up. And John wanted to throw first. He thought, well, since I had the best qualifying, you know, throw, I should be able to have my pick of whatever. And I forget who was running the event. Somebody got steamrolled, and it wasn't Rick Kavar. It was not me. It might have been like John Green or somebody. But the person became persuaded, and so John threw all the way across the field, all the way to the dorm, and then it started raining. And this is a good 25, 30 mile an hour wind. I mean, it's hard to wear a hat. It stopped raining a half an hour later. We started up, and it was dead calm, and the other 4 people threw, and we had no chance.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to, and if I'm missing anything, just because we're typically going to do this as an hour. We go, if we're having fun, we can always go over. But I want to make sure we don't. We're kind of moving this along. So the sport grows. The courses are going on the ground. The Right Life is running tournaments. You guys are involved. This is kind of when I came into the Colorado scene a little bit. And back then, there was 2 places in Colorado, of all places, that didn't have courses. Denver and the mountains. Right?
Well, there was a course in Fraser, Colorado.
Okay, oh no, you're right.
That was in the 70s.
There was a course in Fraser, sure, right. So I think ski resorts. Right? I guess there was a little bit, but that was what has become the hotbed of disc golf in the state. When were you finally able to make one of those 2 things happen? I think mountains first before Denver, right?
Yeah, probably so. Because Denver took a long time just because it was, the process was so involved to get land. And you can imagine what it's like now. Back then it was even tight. But the mountains happened, largely because of Fraser and just, what had started it with grandmas and, being able to camp out and play in a disc golf tournament and hang out and be from start to finish. You lived and breathed with all your competitors and stuff like that. And it was a glorious time at those tournaments. And I think that, even back then, everybody was going, was thinking about, and I know that there was a lot of push to put other courses in the Ware Park area. Steve really tried to get courses there, but, really, I think it wasn't until Aspen came along and kissed the sky that it started to steamroll a little bit more for mountain courses. And
that was a real change in Colorado when you started having a disc golf tournament at 11,000.
And it was really a convergence of Scott Holter being there and living there, and he had set up the course initially, and I was starting to solicit the ski areas because it was like, what are you guys doing during the summer? With all this great land out there, you guys should be doing more. And now all the ski areas have stuff constantly in the summers, but it was we came together. I met up with Scott Holter, and we just we pushed him on it, and we said, you guys need to have baskets on this course, and because Scott had an object course set up there, and it just happened. And once you have Aspen, Colorado, having a disc golf course at 11,212 feet, going to Vail, Beaver Creek, Copper Mountain was a lot easier. They were all like, oh, Aspen's got one, and then Kirkwood in California went in, and, all of a sudden it just started going across the country. And it was, it's just the perfect place for disc golf.
And when was the first Kiss the Sky?
95.
95.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just a couple of years ago, some of the regulations for Forest Service to include summer activities for the ski resorts was passed. And since that legislation has gone through, now disc golf is one of the activities that's listed in those summer events. And so it's much easier now to approach Colorado mountain areas.
Yeah, all of these things were a big deal. I mean, seeing disc golf in the magazine with the other sports that's the way it works now. But back then, when you saw that, you would literally take that magazine from the hotel home with you and put it in your collection because you couldn't believe there was a basket in a magazine of things to do in Breckenridge. Yeah, like all these things were weird. Yeah, when they first happened. Yeah,
it was. You're exactly right. It felt like, all of a sudden we had come into the mainstream of sports, and you didn't know if that was going to stick around or not, but it certainly has, and it's grown, and it's just amazing.
Now, do you guys feel? I mean, at the time, especially, do you feel pride in that? I mean, did you at the time recognize that you had planted the seeds for this? I mean, that this was happening because of people like you, or were you as humble as you seem?
No. Well, no, we definitely take a lot of pride in it, and just feeling like, all right, this going to go, but also at the same time, not, wanting to spread it, spread the jam, so to speak, at the same time, and not, didn't hold it tight, and I feel like that was some of the problem in the early days of disc golf growth, that it was just held so tightly together by, the organization that had control, that it never really got a chance to explode. But as soon as the patent ran out and other people jumped in, the explosion started and the growth started in 1993. It's pretty clear that everything changed at that point.
Okay, so back in those days, I mean, who were the toppers? I mean, we know about Schiller and TJ. Was that the big rivalry back in the day? We'll post to you guys.
Well, whenever Geoff came back, 88,
89, I guess.
And then when did you come?
90. I came in 92.
So
about the same as Mike Randolph.
So you and Randolph, were obviously head to head, and
Daryl
Nodland.
Yes.
Oh God, no! People forget how good that guy was,
and still is.
Still is.
Yeah. I'm going to go play his tournament in Dickinson.
Oh, great.
In September.
Oh my God, you're so good.
Yeah.
But pre us, it was you and Kling Smith.
Kling Smith.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Yeah.
So I mean, but it was tight. I mean, I always heard from Schiller. I mean, well, let me start with TJ.
Jim Proska, Don Danes.
Don Danes.
In the early days, they were hot players also.
Here's a bit. I want to give some trivia about TJ Lawrence, who nobody outside of Colorado just about knows who this player is. If you took every disc golfer who's ever played, I believe, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but what is your average finish at Worlds? Outside of Ken Climo, I think TJ comes in number 2. He's went to Worlds once and finished 4th. So he and by the way, TJ was a woods player. He went to Arizona where there are no trees, and this is Climo's first win, and finished 4th this tournament, and then never won again.
Now, keep in mind that Mike Randolph may have the record number of bridesmaid finishes at Worlds, and we can check with Mike Randolph. Hopefully, he'll hear this. But I mean, year after year, he'd be in the top 4, but he never won it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many years that went on.
You're up there quite a few times.
Yeah, a few times. And oh my God, I'm forgetting his name, but there's a player that I think has 3 second places. There were a lot of bridesmaids when Kenny was.
Yeah, well, that's right. Now it's
just kind of how it
when
worked.
Kenny was on his run. Yeah.
But of course, now we have Eagle from Colorado who's going to do it to everybody. You keep an eye on him for the next few years.
Oh, next 30 years. He's only 12. Love you, Eagle.
He did well at San Francisco last week.
Oh my gosh, he's sick. So, but those are the rivalries back in the days. And what were the big tournaments back then? I mean, starting with the Grateful Disc.
Yeah,
which is what you ran.
Grateful Disc started in '78, and so, but at least in the early days, we were still an overall tournament. We would hold the other events, especially freestyle, and we became part of the college days scene on campus, which was a big old college celebration. And then we had the Frisbee tournament in the middle of it, and freestyle was a big hot spot of that whole celebration and stuff like that. But disc golf was always in there, and we always played some disc golf, and eventually it transitioned into primarily a disc golf tournament. So
okay, and that's been running consecutively for how many years now?
It went for 40 years, and so we're trying to retire very hard and find somebody else to run it.
How does that rank? Wintertime Open's a little bit older.
Virginia is just hit 40.
Virginia State's.
Virginia State's hit 42 this year, and just one of the best. If you ever want to go to an overall tournament, Virginia State's is absolutely the most incredible experience you can have.
Yeah. And by the way, a little more trivia. The longest running Frisbee tournament in the world, I'm sure you guys know this, is
IFT.
Up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Yep.
It's the IFT, the International Frisbee Tournament.
50 something.
Yeah. It's they're 50, or is it 60 this year? Is it 60 this year? 658.
1957 was allegedly the first, but if you go back and look at what discs were available in 1957, I don't know what they played with. Coffee can lids.
No,
well, Sailing Satellite was Whammo's first original disc. The Pluto Platter was Fred Morrison's mold.
But they sold it to Whammo in 57.
They sold it to Whammo, yeah.
Well, keep in mind, because this was initially the core of that tournament is a guts tournament, and the very first Frisbee game was arguably, but on the packaging of the Space Saucer, they described a game that was basically guts.
Right.
Which would be amazing with those, because if you can't catch them without them shattering in your hands. But so that was Guts at a time when Guts was playing. I wasn't obviously there, but
yeah. No, that's the first competitive.
That's how I
Frisbee event,
started
for
playing
sure.
golf.
playing Guts too.
Even before golf, yeah. In fact,
Yeah,
that picture I
probably
sent
too.
you today
Yeah.
of the Rochester Frisbee
Yeah.
Club,
Your first
that's the
deal?
1975 IFT.
Okay.
Not really.
No,
Yeah,
I was
Marquette,
more
Michigan.
overall.
Were you Berkeley? Were you with Dreamer and the Berkeley Frisbee?
No,
Club? You
no,
were part of
no.
that?
I was kind of out in the middle of nowhere in Fresno,
Fresno.
and Northern California.
Oh, we got on time.
We're doing good. We're getting close to the. Oh, I got a virus on my computer. That's unintentional.
She's cute, Scott.
I know.
So
It's my online video
I've got a
converter.
question which
Yes.
he might
Sure.
know because I don't. But PDGA was incorporated in Colorado. Do you know anything about that?
What was the
And-
deal?
and I believe
It was had to do,
Colorado Springs.
yeah, it had to do with a lawyer, and it had to do with somebody that was a disc player and a lawyer that had the had the wherewithal to do it back then.
Yeah.
So that's how I remember it, kind of.
Okay.
So and that probably happened in what, 80 or early 80s,
Probably
81.
before then.
I think
No, PDGA.
Well, PDGA
Well, PDGA
starts
actually,
in 76.
You're right. You're right.
And then Ed has to protect his
Right.
intellectual property. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was pretty soon after he took that list of names.
But the first disc sport to really break away from Whammo was the Freestyle Players Association.
Okay.
So because that and Stork, for God bless him, for all that he did to create this monster for Whammo, he was the one that encouraged these individual sports to break out and have their own players associations and be their own entity outside of Whammo. And I think that was just brilliant at the time. It took a long time for those players association to get established and create their own world championships and stuff like that. But it really was a great thing to get it away from Whammo and not have the kind of the animosity that people had towards Whammo for controlling everything. And Jeff talked a little bit about that with.
So we loved Ed Hedrick. Everybody, he was so supportive, and he gave us a lot of money. I mean, he'd fly you to Worlds, and you'd get food and transport. I mean, the Hedrick's Whammo were great.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that coin, he controls Whammo. They won't let you use any other discs. In fact, they bought CPI and then smashed the molds, right? And he owns the patent on the disc golf pole hole. And now he comes along and says, well, me and my family, we want to run this thing called the Professional Disc Golf Association. But so on the other side of the coin, we're like, I don't know, that seems like too much on just one guy, right?
Too much control.
Well,
Yeah,
let's
too much
break
control.
away into a little story here. So, so Jeff had an opportunity to have a double-digit PDGA number, single-digit.
Actually, the opportunity was a 3-digit, and I could have got something in the 300s.
Okay, so
That's when I got my letter saying
Okay,
you
so it wasn't-
must join.
Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
but you did not join right away. Is that correct?
No, I was helping run the tournament in Boulder when Ed was taking names. Now there's some discussion about whether that was the first place he took names, but I just didn't want to be part of it. But Wham was my sponsor, and so when I went to Worlds, Ken had written a letter saying you won't be able to play disc golf at Worlds unless you're a member of the PDGA.
Ken Hedrick.
That's right, Ken. I'm sorry, yeah, Ken Hedrick. And so, but he did say in the letter that you could pick your own number, and so I picked my IFA number.
Okay, which was
68806. So 688 was the first.
688. And what is your number?
IFA being the International Frisbee
Okay,
Association.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you're
Mine's 387.
387 and
Mine's 2977 because kind of the same thing. I never wanted to join the PDGA because I was a freestyler.
Yeah.
I just freestyled, and then I got to this. We had these North American Series tournaments in San Francisco, and they're like, you have to play 2 events and you have to join the PDGA. And like, all right, I'll join the PDGA.
Gotcha.
So I joined the PDGA, and then I should have been at least in 3 digits someplace, but it wasn't at that time. It wasn't my main focus.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to miss mentioning these people. So we kind of glossed over Denver a little bit, talked about the mountain courses. When courses started going in Denver, there were a couple people who were very heavily influential in that. They got the Badlands course in.
Ronnie?
Ronnie.
Oh, Ronnie Ross.
Ronnie Ross and
Brett
Marshall.
Yes.
Marshall.
And this is important. Like part of the goal of this podcast is I want to be recognized because I know those guys were. Well, I was on the outside, but from all indications, they put in lots and lots of hours to help. I mean, there was a foundation that came before them, clearly, but they did a lot.
And I think they were involved with trying to get the
Paco Sanchez.
Sanchez in too.
Okay.
So
That's by the way, that's a great course.
Huh?
You like it down there?
It's
you would. It's a big
it's
course.
hard.
Yeah.
It's a hard course. Let me. Okay, this is a quick story about Paco Sanchez. That course. The very first time I went there, very first time on my first visit, I saw someone get arrested. I saw a car full of people driving through the middle of the course, no path, just driving through the middle of the course, and I saw a young couple clearly in love. And that was my first visit to Paco Sanchez. Yeah, that place is
That was a pretty tame day
for Paco Sanchez. Yeah, but it's still a great course. But yeah, I just want to make sure these guys get recognized.
Who did Johnny? Was it Johnny and Schiller that put in Memorial Park initially?
Yeah, the post.
The post,
or even the baskets.
Well, Johnny. A lot of people have a misconception of what Johnny did, and one thing he was very upfront with me about is that he said, "I really don't want to be an organization." He spent his entire career teaching, moving kids around, parents, organizing things, and disc golf was kind of his sanctuary of doing what he wanted to do, and that was not organizing tournaments. That was not
soliciting
trying
courses.
but he was the great spiritual leader of us all. And that's what was really cool about him. And
that's how Chauncey Donaldson, who has a top 10 finish at Worlds in Michigan, that's how he got into the sport. Chauncey had some personal tragedies in his life.
And Sabrina. His sister.
Exactly. Sure. But so the story goes across the street from his apartment, very angry at the world as a young kid. I don't want to cry when I'm telling this, but Johnny came and grabbed him and said, let me help you learn how to not be be." And it didn't happen overnight, but he brought Chauncey in, and now Chauncey.
But Frisbee in general for Chauncey and Sabrina both was huge.
Yeah, good outlet.
They got into the junior championship series.
Yeah, they both won world junior titles.
So cool.
I'd like to jump in a little bit with Johnny Roberts because people hear that name, they might not understand the history. I'm going to do a little brief one here.
Yeah.
Johnny Roberts taught high school at Arvada West, and John Schiller was one of his students. Yeah. And in 1976, they came to the Boulder Nationals there at the CU campus, and Rick and I were running that. And they were spectators, and I don't remember them being there. But a few weeks later, they loved Frisbee so much, they got in the car, the two of them, and Johnny Roberts drove John Schiller out to Pasadena to watch the 1976 Frisbee Championships. And that was when I vaguely remember meeting Johnny then, but in the years to come, he was going to just, he was just going to be so enthusiastic. And so will John Schiller. And now I had dropped out, 78 or maybe it was 79. That was my last year I played. So I didn't really follow Johnny for 10 years. I was in England playing with Derek Robbins and Charlie Meade. So you guys can probably get the world caught up on what Johnny accomplished in that time.
Well, exactly what you said. He was what JB said is just he was our spiritual leader. Whenever he would be there, everybody was just in a different state of mind because he was just this smiley, like to talk and tell stories and tell you how good he felt about being there and how good it was to be able to do these kinds of things and you just took it all in.
And he won world titles, right?
Yeah, he won.
Totally.
He won overall world titles and
disc golf
and the age and classification stuff.
Yeah, because he was already in the master or above division at that time. That was 45.
Yeah, because I was 21 when I first met him, and he must have been 45. Yeah, 45.
Yeah, and I basically I worked with him a lot and coached him, and he was just like this young kid sponge that just soaked up everything, and it just showed him how to do it. And he was a small person, but he was very athletic, and he wanted to win, but it wasn't the most important thing about it.
Yeah.
And I got to be basically a ghost freestyler for him in '79 at the WFC there. I didn't compete in that year. That was the first year I didn't compete in WFC. And my job was to just set him up for doing what he wanted to do. And he hadn't won a world freestyle championship, and it was like that's what he wanted to do. So we just spent that summer working on that, but we had to come up with some weird routine. The end had to do something that just left the judges just going, what do we do with that? And I said, okay. We went, okay, we can do a real simple thing that'll just, they're gonna go and just pause. So what we did is we played and threw, and so I just had to do a little bit of stuff just to give him a breath now and then in between throws routine. So at the very end, we said, okay, well, let's do a body roll. Okay. And at that time, body roll was pretty good.
Sure.
Yeah. And so, but Johnny, you've got to start the body roll and I'll end it. But the great thing about it is I won't catch it. We'll just, and so there we go. Okay. In the routine, body roll. Johnny sets it up. Beautiful body roll across there, right across there. And we both pointed to it and just went. And the judges kind of went.
They did it on purpose.
And yeah, but the fun thing about it was executed 100% correctly because they were judging him, not me.
Oh, I gotcha.
So they
didn't know what to do.
Yeah, and it was funny, and he won freestyle.
That's amazing.
So I like to just point out that when you and I started out playing it, or when I first met you in '75, it was a young person's sport. And by that, I mean everybody's under 30.
Yeah.
So when Johnny Roberts came along, Ralph Williamson,
Yeah.
Ed Hedrick, and who was the fourth Rat Pack?
Well, I know there was Ron Riddell, there was Paul Harris.
But we were amazed. These people
Papa
were
Jack.
so old. I mean, 45 years old. My gosh, you can't even think
Yeah.
that far. And so, and here was Johnny Roberts getting the job done, playing really good frisbee. And this was sort of the beginning of the Masters division. I mean, in my mind, he and Ralph Williamson and Ed Hedrick and the other person I really need to know, Jim Palmieri. I mean, these guys were older and they were fantastic players, and they showed us that it was possible to be older and be good.
And it became actually the one of the best parts about frisbee and flying disc is that it's ageless. It's the ageless game. You really can play till you can't walk.
Yeah, there's a lot of people right now wish I'd stop playing.
So right now I'm going to be running the High Plains Challenge June 15th through the 17th in Fort Morgan, and I've got a 70 plus group of five players that are still playing disc golf
At 70 plus.
at 70 plus.
Pro or am?
Whoa.
Am.
Oh, okay.
That's
Tell them
fantastic.
to move up.
Yeah,
A bunch of baggers.
I know, right?
But these guys have so much fun. It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, they're out there and they're competing just as hard as they can to beat each other. But they're just having a lot of fun.
So I think we're a little bit, which is fine, a little bit over. I want to ask you guys. Well, first off, did I miss any? Did we miss anybody? Is there anybody that needs to be recognized?
I one of the things that I've thought about a lot lately, digging through my archives, some of the people that need to be recognized in disc sports are photographers and the people that put things together. Dave Schwartz in particular, it took pictures all over the place when we were doing our early events, and we're finding all these pictures, and it's like, thank goodness somebody had the wherewithal to recognize it and stuff like that. The Scott Stars, Denell Tate, the people that were the photographers back in those days. Everybody's a photographer now, but back in those days, it was all film. It was all, you had to buy the film, you had to process it, it was expensive. It was expensive. It took time, and a lot of that stuff is still sitting in negatives. Yeah. And right now we're just starting to go through it, and it's worth it to go print those things out. So I'll show you guys a few things afterwards. Yeah.
What are you guys? Anybody that we're missing?
I think
female. We talk about guys. Who are some of the really impressive women?
Kylie Young.
Kylie Young in the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Leslie Scott in the 70s.
And bless her soul, she did so much stuff for disc sports and for foot bag. Mm-hmm. She did granny bags, which ended up being Sipa, which she'd take the yarn to the old ladies' home so that they could sew foot bags or knit foot bags. So she was a wonderful person back in our world back then.
Peg and Sue. Can never forget those.
Great things for sports.
Yes. Sue was taking care of everybody, and Peg she won a world title.
Yep.
So they're on the map.
That's Peggy Berry and
Sue
Landy.
Sue B. Landy, yep. Yeah. Sue was my personal massage therapist when I was competing for and Randolph and Chauncey. Yeah. And
Randolph gave you massages? Oh, just kidding.
I think it was either Randolph or Sue. I can't. I'm at that age. My memory escapes me.
Well, I think in Colorado, we had spots of disc activities going on, and Pueblo was one of the places. Pueblo and Colorado Springs, then Denver, Arvada, Boulder, and
Fort Collins.
Boulder just didn't have a course until 4 years ago or whatever.
So, we had the campus course.
We had the campus course, but that didn't really get. They kind of shut that down at some point.
We had Harlow Platts in '91.
Okay.
And we had the cemetery.
That's right.
Street
That was
Cemetery.
Harlow Platts. Had a great course over the years.
Yeah. So you laugh at the cemetery thing, but just this is an important part of Boulder history, anyways, is that people wanted to play disc golf on Boulder, and they couldn't find a place the city really wouldn't give us much attention. So they played on 9th Street at the cemetery among the tombstones and giant, and people saw that. That went on for a few years, and they complained to the city. Yeah. And they couldn't really stop it because you just hop at funds and you can play frisbee golf there. The city said, well, okay, we now recognize we need a course. And that's how Harlow Platts got started. I think it was 91 because I was out there digging post holes and got blisters on my hands from. If you were out there recently, that is solid rock under that grass.
I had a big auger.
It took me a rock bar.
But, I know. It's this area is called Rocky Mountain region for a reason. It is Bird's Nest. We have 90 different pin locations, and I only dug one of those that didn't hit a rock.
Huh. Gotcha. So, well, cool, you guys. If there's nothing else, we can.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
And thank you to Johnny Van Dersen.
Yeah.
Oh, and to SmashBoxxTV. SmashBoxxes could not happen without them. They are the brains behind this. SmashBoxx is possible for me to just plug in my computer and have a conversation with my friends and the people I look up to. And so thank you, SmashBoxx. And one last reminder, there's going to be a schedule of the Blue Power events from My Ulterior Motive. Please come out and compete in these professional Disc Golf Association tournaments with a special needs component in addition to the golf event. The information will be on the website. And that's it. You guys, it's been so much fun.
We got to keep it rolling. We got to keep the documenting all this stuff.
Yeah.
And you suggested last year that we start a Colorado hall of something so we can contribute all this stuff, put it on a wall, and we need to follow through with that.
Well, we need to get it a timeline made for all of it. And I found out so much more tonight than I'd never known. So it's great. It's a good start.
Cool, man. Well, hey, thanks to you guys.
Well, the fun thing about the history is that everybody's got their own view of it, and a lot of the disc history has been kind of segmented that way across the country. And so now a lot of people are trying to pull some of that together. And of course, there's a who did what first and all that. But
Yeah.
what we're finding out is a lot of people were doing a lot of things at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
but we were so far apart that you didn't know what
Yeah.
was going on or when it was going on.
Yeah.
And so it's fun to see it.
Great
coming.
to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm great. Well, thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Scott. That
All
was
right,
thanks,
Jonathan,
Thanks,
we'll
Scott.
go ahead and we'll call to see if our technical people are still